Okay, have you ever really stopped to think about the period at the end of a sentence? Or the comma you just glance past? I mean, we use them every single day without a second thought, but it turns out these little marks have an absolutely wild and fascinating history. So let's dive into the surprising 2,000-year-long story of punctuation. One long string of letters. Yeah, for centuries, that's literally what written Greek and Latin looked like. Just try to imagine your favorite book or a news article as one single unbroken chain of characters. Historians actually have a term for it. They call it an interminable mess. And, they're not wrong. So because of this mess, ancient Greeks and Romans couldn't just read silently in their heads the way we do. Nope. They had to read everything out loud. They used the natural rhythms of their speech to kind of feel out where one word ended and the next one began. It was literally the only way to make any sense of the text. So, how in the world did we get from that chaotic black of letters to the clear, structured writing we all use today? Well, the answer is this incredible 2,000-year story of innovation, happy accidents, and a constant, relentless quest for clarity. First up, to really get the solution, we have to appreciate the problem. We have to understand what it was like living in an unpunctuated world. The challenges were just huge. I mean, no spaces, no upper or lower case. Every text was basically a puzzle you had to solve. And get this, the simple act of putting spaces between words, that didn't become common until around the 10th century. We can thank some very fed-up English, Irish, and German scribes for that innovation. They were just tired of dealing with what they called impenetrable Latin prose. Okay, so with the problem set, the first solutions weren't actually about grammar. They were about performance. It was all about helping people speak the text correctly. Our story's first hero is this man, Aristophanes of Byzantium. He was working at the legendary Library of Alexandria, and he came up with the first system of dots. But here's the key. It wasn't to clarify meaning. It was just to guide the person reading out loud on when to pause and take a breath. Punctuation was basically born as stage direction. And his system was beautifully simple. A dot at the bottom of the line, the comma, meant a short pause. A dot in the middle, a colon, was for a longer one. And a dot at the top, the periodos, signaled the longest break at the end of a thought. Brilliant, right? Well, the Romans completely ignored it, and this clever idea just died out for centuries. So now let's fast forward a few hundred years, because a major turning point is coming. Punctuation's entire job description is about to get rewritten, all thanks to a new group with a very powerful motivation. In the 6th century, Christian writers brought back the dot system, but for a totally different reason. When you're translating and copying the Bible, clarity is everything. Their mission was to spread the word of God and, as they put it, leave minimal space for ambiguity. Punctuation was no longer about sound, it was about certainty of meaning. And this was a huge functional shift, a real game changer. What started as a guide for the ear, a tool for recitation, was reborn as a guide for the eye, a tool for grammar. That high dot wasn't just a long pause anymore. It became the distinctio finalis, the final end of a sentence. This right here is the foundation of punctuation as we know it. But evolution is never that simple. Just as punctuation was finding its footing, new technologies and even new writing styles came along and forced it to adapt all over again. Believe it or not, a simple change in handwriting threw everything into chaos. The three-dot system worked just fine with uniform capital letters, but when scribes started using lowercase letters with their, and I just love this description, tall, stretchy bits and pendulous, dangly bits, you suddenly couldn't tell if a dot was high, middle, or low. The whole system just collapsed. So out of that chaos, new forms had to emerge. To mark a mid-sentence pause, scribes invented the virgule, which is pretty much just a forward slash. Then, over time, printers shrunk it down and gave it what one historian calls a cute little curl. And there you have it, our modern comma was born. The printing press was another huge source of pressure. Symbols like the dipel, the ancestor of our quotation marks, were originally put in the page margin just to highlight a piece of text. But for a printer setting up type, that was a total nightmare. So the marks had to move. They migrated from the margins and right into the text itself to neatly bookend the quotes they were marking. This brings us to my favorite part, the quirky, improvised, and sometimes just plain weird origins of some of our most common punctuation marks. The exclamation mark. Its origin is a perfect example of sheer practicality. It's believed that scribes, who were always trying to save expensive paper, took the Latin exclamation of joy, I-O, and just stacked the I right on top of the O. Over time, it just got streamlined into the mark we use today. Pretty clever, huh? Of course, not everyone was a fan. F. Scott Fitzgerald famously said using one was like laughing at your own joke. Ouch. Printers even had nicknames for it, like the Screamer or the Gasper, which kind of tells you everything you need to know about how it was viewed. And what about quotation marks? Well, they were born from pure improvisation. Early printers just didn't have a specific symbol for quotes, so they just used what they had, commas. To make them look different, they'd invert them or double them up, and that's how we got the inverted commas we still use. You know, some punctuation rules are based on, well, a mistake. The origin of the possessive apostrophe comes from a complete misunderstanding. People thought that saying Mike's house was a shorthand for Mike his house. Old English never needed this, but the misconception stuck, giving us one of the most commonly confused rules in the language today. So, after all these twists and turns and happy accidents, what have we learned? Let's kind of zoom out and look at the big picture of punctuation's legacy. I think the main takeaway is that punctuation isn't some dusty set of ancient rules that never changes. It's a living technology. It's this toolkit that we've been modifying and upgrading for over 2,000 years, creating a scaffolding and signaling system to make absolutely sure our ideas are understood with perfect clarity. And that brings us right to today. In a world of text messages, emojis, and reaction GIFs, we are writing the next chapter in this story right now. So think about it. What new signals are we inventing to add tone and meaning to our digital words? The evolution of punctuation is far, far from over.